Good morning and a warm welcome to Ask the Expert. Ask the Expert is an award-winning daily series from 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. to help small businesses just like you. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments of the live feed. And if you need any more advice, join the official Intuit QuickBooks SME community group on Facebook, where accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7, just like myself. During the session, we'll be running a poll, so please do engage and I'll reveal the results at the end. Okay, so who am I? Well, my name is Aaron Patrick, and it's an absolute pleasure to be with you again. I'm a chartered accountant and also a certified trainer for QuickBooks with a fancy new logo. So don't be afraid to ask me any QuickBooks related questions. I also own a state-of-the-art online accounting firm called Boffix, which uses the best cloud technology available to help small businesses get the crucial real-time information they need at their fingertips. If you require any accounting advice, payroll, bookkeeping service, and now even QuickBooks online training, then please do get in touch. We don't want small businesses just to survive, but to thrive. Also, I have a dedicated QuickBooks YouTube channel called Aaron Patrick, the QuickBooks Chap. If you need any more QuickBooks news and advice, then why not go over and give the channel a follow. Okay, and about me, so let's focus on today's session. As always, this session is all about you and your burning questions. If you have any questions, then please use any of the social channels to get in touch. So while we wait for the first of the questions to arrive, let's start with a quick little section about what was on last Tuesday, which was QuickBooks Get Connected, an interactive virtual conference designed to keep you up to date with the world of QuickBooks itself. And the conference itself has some really great elements to it. I want to go through some of the 3 key areas that I thought was absolutely brilliant in this year's Get Connected. First of all, we start off with an opening keynote, which as always talks about how well QuickBooks has done over the last year or last 6 months, however long it's going to be. And it talked about what the future looks like and how small businesses have been affected during that time. What was a great part of that as well was a nice little mention for myself and fellow Ask the Expert Rachel from Accountancy, who talked about our YouTube channels and how we've started to get them up and running during the pandemic. Other highlights included from the actual conference itself was 2 really inspirational speakers from Professor Hannah Fry and Amar Laffit, and both of them gave us some really great insights into 2 very different topics, but I highly recommend that you go and catch them on demand. There was another great session as well, which was Grow Your Practice Through Sole Traders. That really gave us a great little insight into how sole traders themselves are going to be a really good commodity when it comes to accountants, especially with MTD, which I'm about to come on to in a moment. But sole traders themselves have a real good opportunity for us, especially with the way that software, the QuickBooks software is evolving and giving us lots of opportunities for you to be able to look after them in more meaningful ways than ever. If you think about what's happened with QuickBooks over the past 12 months to 24 months, you'll know there's been a real design and real philosophy in making sure that the self-employed aspects of your client base have been really looked after. So if you are in an accountancy practice, that's a really great keynote to look at, and especially looks at the fact that there are some great innovations coming within QuickBooks Online and already there. You know, you like the likes of the self-employed income tax that's there, tax estimate, and it will give you the opportunity to see what else is there. So a really good little keynote, that one. Then the rest of the attention kind of went over to MTD, so making tax digital. So if you're an accounting practice or if you're a small trade, a small business, then this can't be any more relevant to you, really. It's going to be one of the biggest changes we've ever had. So it was great to see that at the Get Connected event, there was so much emphasis on what was actually going to happen. So first of all, we had a live session with HMRC themselves, and they gave us a little talk through of what they felt that MTD means and ITSA or MTD ITSA, so making tax digital, but income tax self-assessment means for you and your clients. So it was a very good session, that one, which went through basically what we should be worried about as accountants themselves, what we should be preparing ourselves for, and making sure that when the MTD does come around, that we're very prepared to help our clients and making sure that we're in the best possible hands for them. We were also able at the end of that to give some opportunity, should I say, to bombard HMRC with questions on MTD. And that really was a great chance for us to start asking those nitty-gritty questions that I think still need to be left answered. Although we got that extra delay with MTD itself for that extra year, I really do think that that year is going to be well put to use, because there are still so many questions that we're still trying to figure out, trying to understand, and trying to iron out, ready for when MTD does finally get launched. So it's good to see that section there. And then the big one, the big kind of reveal within this keynote itself, or the virtual conference itself, was the idea, or was the opportunity for us to see MTD for QuickBooks and the It's a product. So we got our first look into this. And the whole point of this was to take a first look into QuickBooks MTD for ITSA and see the key features will help you and your practice and clients stay compliant. And it certainly delivered on that one. I did a whole video on this. So if you go over to my QuickBooks, Aaron Patrick, the QuickBooks Chap channel, then tomorrow at 12 o'clock, there will be a video showing you exactly how this looked. But in the meantime, I can tell you exactly what was actually talked about and shown, and give you some insights into it as well. Also, I did a webinar with the guys over at Accounting Web for a No Accounting for Taste webinar. I also gave my first initial reaction on that. So either way, you're going to be able to see and hear about these changes or these upcoming additions to the product. So in truth, if you think about what's happened over the last 6 months or so with QuickBooks Online, we've been a little bit starved of product changes and updates. So it was great to see some actual changes on its way. I know I'm slightly biased because I have a podcast that talks all about what happens with QuickBooks Online as QuickBooks Labs, but it was great to see this product. It really gave us an opportunity to see where the software was going to take it and how MTD really does feel like. Because as soon as you start seeing it in action, as soon as you start seeing the actual way it's going to be implemented, you can start really understanding how MTD is going to be significant and change the way that we are going to be doing taxes going forward. So the first look, basically for me, the first thing that I would want to say is my first initial reaction is just how slick the experience looks like and the interface looks like within QuickBooks Online. So it's a massive positive. The actual section itself, if you think about QuickBooks Online now and go down your left-hand panel and you go to your taxes section where primarily your VAT section is, well, as soon as MTD goes live, that's where the MTD section is looking like it's going to be. Within that section there, you will see that the actual progress or process of actually dealing with MTD is it'll be split into 4 distinct quarters. And all 4 of those quarters will have almost like a traffic light system available to them to let you know at what stage each one of those traffic lights or each one of those quarters are at. And I feel that that's a really, really positive way of looking at it. And it gives you the opportunity as the end user or as the accountant to really understand exactly how you are doing when it comes to your compliance towards MTD. So those 4 quarters are going to be sat there. And as time progresses on, you'll be moving through those 4 quarters. And it gives you an opportunity directly from that page to press submit. And you're going to be submitting each individual quarter. Now, one of the really cool things that we saw there is there's a handy visual cue for if anything's changed in a particular quarter. So imagine you've gone through and you've filed your first quarter and you want to your second quarter, and then you notice there's something maybe amiss or there's extra information or there's something that involves that previous quarter. Well, QuickBooks is going to be clever enough to notice you've made an adjustment to that quarter and prompt you to resubmit that quarter. And the great thing is you can make as many submissions of an individual quarter as you want, keeping it up to date and letting HMRC basically know that there's been updates to that particular quarter. So that traffic light system is going to make your life really easy. That green, yellow, and red, I believe it was. And it's going to let you know basically how it's going if you're overdue from submitting a particular MTD quarter, or if you're actually ready to, or if you've got any issues with a particular quarter. For example, the fact that you might have made an adjustment. Or green to say basically everything looks fantastic and you're fully compliant. We also had the opportunity as well to see what happened after those 4 quarters have been completed, and then you had your year-end submission or your end-of-year submission. And at that point as well, we can see that it will only let you submit that end-of-year when all 4 quarters above have been submitted. So it's going to be a very visual, basic interface. It's looking really, really slick, as I said. And also, as soon as you submit each and individual quarters, it's going to give you a little indication at the top of how much tax possibly is going to be due on there. So that should be really great for cash flow planning, really great for you understanding exactly what your business needs to think about when it comes to taxes. And I think the interface itself looks really, really good. We then got the opportunity to ask some questions, and I thought that this was a great little opportunity. So I definitely jumped in and took that advantage. Some of the questions I threw at the team though was, would QuickBooks Self-Employed, the actual software itself, be included? There wasn't a definitive result for that, but there will be a solution one way or another. And I've got a feeling there'll be more to come on that, which I'm definitely looking forward to. And if you want to learn more about that, definitely stay tuned to Ask the Expert. I'm sure we'll let you know as soon as possible on it. I also asked about how to handle disallowable expenses. Again, there's not a definitive answer for that yet, but that's definitely something being worked in. And I did also ask the question of a Vat Error Checker. So at the moment, when we go to submit our VAT returns, we get this really handy tool where we can check the data before we submit it. So it gives us an opportunity to do a bit of an analytical review, which is absolutely amazing, using a bit of machine learning and all that sort of technology. And basically, I asked the question, well, if we've got it for the VAT Error Checker, do we have it for MTD as well? And we got a very cheeky smile about that one. So fingers crossed, that's something we can definitely look forward to as well. We still need to figure out what's going to happen with fixed assets and capital allowances. So that's definitely something that when that software is available, we can test out and try. But I think that's definitely going to be something that we'll be looking into. So basically for me, I think the implementation of the software, the way that it looks so far is giving a lot of confidence to us as accountants, and also should do for you as small business as well. So I'm really thinking that as scary as MTD for its sounds and looks, I think the software, rightly so, is going to play a really important part. And I think QuickBooks is going to definitely be a software choice that's going to make it even better. Finally, though, just before I move on to the most important part of today, which is all about you and your burning questions, I do want to give that little reminder out that it is budget day on Wednesday. So do make sure that you get yourself prepared for whatever could be announced over at the budget itself. We did some predictions again over on the podcast at No Accounting for Taste. So do have a listen to that one. Some real tinfoil hat options there to try and make sure that we can hopefully prepare for the worst case scenario in some of those situations. So do give that a listen. And on the day itself, over on my channel, we will be doing a live reactions to the budget itself. And we've got some really good guests lined up, including some fellow Ask the Experts as well. So do keep in touch with that one so that you get all you need to know about what's happening with the budget. Right then, so remember, this session is all about you and your burning questions. So if you do have any of them, then please do use the comment in the live section of this video. Get yourself involved. Okay, question number 1. Owen on Twitter DM asks the following. I'm a sole trader and I'm not VAT register. Do we enter our expenses as tax inclusive? Great question there, Owen. So basically what Owen is saying here is that as a brand new business, one of the first questions you have to ask yourself is, do you need to become VAT registered? Because you may not know this, but actually VAT registration is not compulsory until you earn more than £85,000 in turnover. Important to note, that's turnover, not profit. So if that means it's not compulsory and it's your choice between the 0 to £85,000, then sometimes there can be a lot of confusion out there as to what to do with VAT if you haven't decided to become VAT registered. And in this case, Owen is talking about how that at this moment in time, they've decided, and probably rightly so for their business, that they are not going to voluntarily become VAT registered. They're going to wait until they go over that 85,000 threshold, or any of the other criteria means that they have to become VAT registered. But during this time, they're not. So the question does basically ask yourself, or you do find, or as a business, you do get very confused about the fact that, well, what do I do with VAT? Basically, if you have decided not to become VAT, then that means you ignore VAT whatsoever. VAT doesn't become something that you have to analyze separately when it comes to actually dealing with your transactions and dealing with your books. Basically, what you're asked to pay for, that total with VAT on, is the amount that you will include inside of your books and inside your final accounts. So to answer that question really straightforwardly, do we enter our expenses of tax inclusive? Well, yes, you'll be making sure that that VAT is included, and you won't have any requirement whatsoever to basically split out the VAT element. It's only when you're VAT registered do you get that perk, if you like, of being able to actually split out the VAT on your expenses and actually claim that VAT that you've incurred. So yeah, straightforward for you, really. Don't worry whatsoever about VAT, but do keep an eye on that turnover. That's why QuickBooks becomes really, really handy. You can set it so that basically inside of your QuickBooks dashboard, you can set your 365-day turnover, and that means that you can constantly keep an eye on if you're going to hit that £85,000 threshold. So good luck out there, Owen. Hopefully you can see that that answered your question. And in a real short sense, just don't worry about VAT until you hit 85K. Brilliant. Grant on Instagram DM asks the following: I've noticed recently that PayPal takes fees when we receive money. How should I be logging this in QuickBooks, particularly when we don't receive a full amount on the original sales price? What a question, Grant. And this is a question I've answered time and time again over on my QuickBooks channel. So Aaron Patrick, the QuickBooks Chap, but I'm more than happy to go through it again live here on Ask the Expert. So basically, you have multiple options of how you're going to deal with this. And it all depends on how many transactions you have going through your PayPal. You see, PayPal and a lot of services like that, so Stripe is another one, basically any system these days that takes you or gives you the opportunity to receive payment and has fees taken directly on that payment, you're going to have to follow these simple solutions to be able to get yourself sorted. Now, the first way of doing it is to use the use revolve or you resolve a difference option within QuickBooks Online. So basically, to activate the resolve difference option, when you have received that money, and rightly so, you've said there, Grant, that you've received less than you've actually asked for. So imagine you've had £100 that you're expecting to be paid for. They've actually paid you £100, but PayPal, whatever the system's going to be, has actually deducted, let's say, £5 from you as fees. Then at that point, you're only going to receive £95 into your bank account. So the way to deal with that, if you've only got one or two transactions, is to actually go in and use the find match option. That will bring up all of your sales items that you have there, giving you the opportunity to find that £100. Now, when you find that £100, you are going to put £100 against it. Because if you think about it, if you only put £95 against it, then you could be looking to chase the customer for that extra £5. And if they've actually paid you £100 and you're chasing them for that £5 because of a fee you've incurred, I don't think they're going to be very happy about it. So do make sure you apply the full £100 to say that you have received all £100 of it. And at that point, then you will have the option to be able to go in and use the resolve difference at the very bottom. And all you're going to do then is put that £5 difference against PayPal charges or whatever third-party solution you're using, and put it through from there. Now, that's the kind of the way to do it if you've got only a couple of transactions there. If you have more than a couple of transactions, though, I would highly suggest you start thinking about using what's called a control account. And effectively what the control account will do is that you're going to post the £100 against it, the £95 against it, leaving you a £5 difference in that control account, which you would then put to fees. And the good thing about that is you could maybe just write off those fees on a weekly, monthly basis, something like that, giving you a bit more of a control over it. Now, all of those options there are manual options for you. The final solution for you could be to use a third-party app. There's quite a few third-party apps out there that can help. Cinder's one that I've used from time to time. I find it really, really powerful. But also, don't forget, QuickBooks now has the QuickBooks e-commerce connector that they acquired from OneSaaS. So there's lots of solutions in there that's going to help you and your business be able to automate these solutions as well. The other thing to note as well is if you use directly within QuickBooks Online and you use the Pay Invoice button, so you'll notice that Pay Invoice has a little option there. That's actually powered by PayPal. And if you use the integration from there, all your fees and everything else is all dealt with automatically for you. So depending on how many transactions you are, I've used that Fine Resolve if it's just a one-off, a control account if you've got lots and lots of transactions, or finally consider using one of the third-party apps. www.apps.com is your friend. That's where your app store is for QuickBooks Online. So you'll be able to find lots and lots of options there to help you go along. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Grant, that answers your question, and good luck with it. Do have a look at my videos, though. I've done quite a few videos on control accounts and how to deal with them. So you should find you've got plenty of support there as well. Kate on Facebook Messenger asked the following. My blog doesn't have any income streams, but we've seen an increase in traffic recently. So I've been looking to setting up Adsense. Is this a good idea? And do I need to set up a business to do it? Or can the revenue come directly to me? Great question there, Kate. So basically, first of all, well done for getting yourself on the blog train there. I think it's been a very, very popular form of passive income lately. We've seen a lot of people seeing some great success out of putting that content there. And, you know, Kate, the fact that you've done that first step and you got yourself onto the first step is great to see. So when it comes to income, this is all about basically, and this happens a lot throughout when we're talking about, and again, one of the higher topics that we have over on the channel is all about side hustle and side gigs, and basically what do you do when you've got other income streams. So first of all, the question about, is it worthwhile doing AdSense? Well, yes, you know, the opportunity to have some nice passive income, no matter how you deal with it or how it's taxed, is always going to be beneficial, isn't it? The fact that, you know, that blog could be, and the idea really is that you're trying to find some what's called evergreen content that basically lives there and constantly is being looked at and read at. And I think that can be a really powerful way of being able to make some great passive income going forward. That being said, though, how do you account for it? Well, you have the various choices. You can either account for it as a sole trader or as a limited company. You do need to make that decision really before you set up your AdSense, because it can get a bit complicated to move your AdSense from a sole trader to a limited company. My personal opinion is sole trader, when you very start out, just to see how it's going to be, is probably going to be the most sensible for you. It may not be the most tax efficient as ever, or can be, but at least it's a lot less complicated than having a limited company and having to go through the compliance related to it. Don't forget that you've got MTD coming up for self-assessment, so it might throw a little spanner in the works, but I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. That being said, though, when it comes to that side hustle income, there's one number or one amount that you need to consider, and that is the total received in a tax year. If that total received, so remember that's income, not profit, so the total amount of income you received in a particular tax year is over £1,000, then you need to make sure you are registered for self-employed. If it's not, and include it on your tax return. And if it's not over £1,000, then you don't need to include it on a tax return. My personal advice, though, is to make sure you're registered for self-employed no matter what your income stream is looking like being. But the beauty of that is, if you don't have your income over £1,000, you won't need to include that revenue stream in your tax return going forward. That's my own personal advice. I've seen it so many times when people haven't got themselves self-employed, missed the fact that they've gone over £1,000 and ended up having to backdate and going through a bit of mess and all that sort of stuff. And you don't want to, you want to avoid that as much as possible. So if you've got yourself registered for self-employed, then you can track how much money you've earned from your AdSense. Again, if it's over £1,000 in a year, you're including it on your tax return. If it's under £1,000 in a year, you have no requirement to put it on a tax return. So that's going to make sure you're keeping nice and compliant that way round. Good luck with it, Kate. Fingers crossed for you. Hopefully, this becomes a nice little side or passive income stream for you that you'll be able to make some really good profits from. Jerry on Facebook Messenger asks the following. I launched my business 10 years ago. Well done, Jerry. And currently run it with my family, who I currently treat as employees. I want to bring my daughter in officially, make sure she and the family are protected, and will still have ownership of the business if I was to die. What are my options and what are the pros and cons of each? Well, Jerry, this is a very complicated question. There's a lot of questions that are starting to brew in my mind, and there's a lot really we need to kind of unpack there. I would highly, highly recommend that you definitely talk to an accountant. So, reach out to me if you need to, hello@boffix.com. But just to simplify things or to keep your things straightforward as possible, you've not said if you've got a limited company or not. I think that's going to be basically the main crux of it. If you're limited or if you are partnership/sole trader, there's going to be a massive difference in the way we can advise you on this one. But if you have got a limited company, then depend on the age of your daughter as well, depends on what options you've got. But you should, if your daughter is of age and has a national insurance number, you can definitely bring her on the payroll. There's no problem with that. And when it comes to ownership, then you can definitely look at starting to basically sell her some shares, start bringing those shares in. Do be aware of what's going to happen over at the budget, though, on Wednesday. Keep a very, very close eye on that one, because if it does come to the fact that we're going to have to reduce our capital gains allowance, which does look very likely, there could be some really serious tax consequences there if you're not planning correctly how to start selling those shares to your daughter. Basically, as well, you can either decide that your daughter, quote unquote, pays for those shares, or you could gift for those shares. And that could have a big difference in the way that inheritance tax could come into play when you mentioned about the if I was to die element to it. Basically, there's a lot to unpack there. Highly recommend that you do have a sit down. It will be worthwhile for you because there's a lot of tax consequences that you can avoid. So I would highly, highly recommend just having a chat. Most accountants, myself included, that first half an hour or so is completely free of charge. So you'll understand exactly from there what the pitfalls are going to be and why it'll be worthwhile. We've got one final question then, and it's definitely a question I want to answer because Apple related. Good luck on that, by the way, Jerry. Yeah, do reach out if you need anything. Fleur on Twitter DM asked the following: can business trade in Apple phones with Apple training program to upgrade employee iPhones? And of course they can. I actually have a Apple business representative for all my Apple purchases. And I basically go through him or her, and basically then from there on in, we can make sure that all of any employees that I have or any employees that are using Apple products, we can make sure we get the best possible deal. So my biggest thing that I would say to you is to head over to Apple themselves, go talk to the business team. So Apple has their own stores, but behind each one of those stores is an Apple business representation, and in there you'll be able to get the best deals possible for your business. They're very much on the more you buy from them, the more perks you get sort of idea. So there is some real good perks that you can get from there. And I've also found that it's a good way of being able to ensure that you get the latest technology when you need it as well, because you get some really good options for you able to get some pre-orders in there, sometimes ahead of the rest of the curve. So it's always good to go through from there. So yeah, in a simple nutshell, there are plenty of options available for you. Make sure you utilize them and hopefully you get some perks for it as well. So Fleur, that was the final question of the day. Hopefully that's answered it as needed. As always, everyone, today's been a great session in terms of your questions. Don't forget to ask those questions on the live as we speak. So the question that I asked everyone to talk about, or the poll that we've been putting out there we asked you all to be involved in, was: has your turnover increased in Q3, quarter three? And unfortunately, 0% of you said yes, 50% of you said no, and around about 50% of you answered not much change. That's not great news for a Monday morning, but hopefully we've definitely seen in our clients and we've seen with the businesses we're looking after, we've definitely seen that there has been a turnaround this quarter, and a recovery is starting to happen. So I'm hoping out there to everyone listening that hopefully your recovery for your business will start soon, and hopefully you'll see that this is going to be the start of actually coming back to some form of normality. That's what I hope for every single one of you. And hopefully that's, and if you keep listening to Ask the Expert, I'm sure you'll get some tips and tricks on how to achieve that as well. So thank you all for tuning in this morning. If you want to get in contact with me, as I said before, do contact me on hello@boffix.com, or go and head over to the YouTube channel, Aaron Patrick, the QuickBooks Chap. A lot of the questions that we've talked about today, there are already dedicated videos on there. So if you want to go through in a little bit more detail, want to see me actually showing you how QuickBooks can be set up for those answers that we talked about above there, then please do head over to the channel. Coming up on Ask the Expert tomorrow, we've got an absolute cracker. Jack Griffiths, who is co-founder of the luxury loungewear brand Snuggie. Tune in to get advice on working with influencers and getting the most out of them while working within a tight budget. And I promise you, it's a topic that is becoming more and more prevalent. We here at Boffix, we've been having the same conversations, the same talking point, and it is definitely something I will certainly be turning into tomorrow. I've got some questions already lined up, and I'm looking forward to getting those answered live on QuickBooks Ask the Expert tomorrow at 8:30. A reminder that if you need any more advice on the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook, accountant and business experts on hand 24/7, just like myself. So I've had a really good day. I've really enjoyed answering your questions this morning. Have a fantastic day, and I'm sure I'll see you soon. Bye for now.